Darlene Van de Grift, welcome to Nature of Reality Radio. Like many of my guests that I have been contacting, I heard about you from an interview that you did with Neil Gore of Portal to Ascension, who will be a guest on my show in the near future, and I've been to a couple of his conferences. Fascinating guy, and well, certainly worthwhile to have someone like you on the show, looking at your site and the services that you have to offer and such. Your site is SoulUnion.com. Very, very lovely name for a website, I'm sure. Soul Union, because we want to unite a lot of souls for sure, and get our own souls united in whatever parts may not be united with our own souls. But before I give you the chance to tell your life story regarding who you are, what you experienced that causes you to do the stuff that you do, from a primary source standpoint, just want to once again give out a couple of disclaimers of sorts to my listeners. Folks, it has come to the point where I'm going to have to cut back on the amount of time I do these shows. Used to do 2-hour shows all the time. Now it's going to be an hour to an hour and 15 minutes. I'm sorry, but the humans have lousy attention spans factor really has been a pain in the butt regarding enabling me to get a very big subscription audience. So I think it's time I cut back on that. And it's not really such a bad idea because I can still get a lot of information out in an hour and 15 minutes. I ask hard questions and all. Also, all my shows will be uploaded to YouTube and also Cost.tv. For first 3 weeks or so, 2 to 3 weeks, the interviews, well, you'll have to subscribe to Patreon to listen to them before I make them public for everybody 2 to 3 weeks after I do them. And I will also upload them to Cost.tv. Please listen to them on Cost.tv instead of YouTube because that's where I can get monetization. It's a blockchain monetization channel. The link will be in the video description. Only listen to YouTube for 15 seconds or so and then click to Cost.tv. And, well, folks, and also when summer solstice comes around, this show is going to become partially pay-per-view, about 60% free and 40% you'll have to pay me on Patreon to listen to the rest of the interviews. I'm sorry, but there's definitely a push for a lot of people to try to charge for their work. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but in this day and age where you want to try to break free from the system of domination and control, trying to find alternate ways to monetize for your own creations, including your own radio shows, is definitely worthwhile. So I babbled long enough with my disclaimer there. Darlene Vandergrift, please, the video description that Neil Gore, when he did an interview with you, he referred to you, I believe, as a walk-in, but then again, he referred to a lot of other people on his show as walk-ins. Does he always interview walk-ins? Well, maybe he does, but if there's more to your life than just the walk-in factor, then by all means, I want you to get into that. So who you are and what you experienced. I have your About Me section on your website. I'll copy and paste that in the video description when I upload this to YouTube, but I'm sure that you can speak more than you have here in your video description and also enlighten a lot of people about a lot of things by being a primary source. So please, I babbled long enough. I will put myself on mute. I will not interrupt you. I don't have Alex Jones-itis. I will put myself on mute and shut up and let you speak as long as you need to tell your life story. Knock yourself out. You got the floor.
Thank you, Andrew. Thanks for having me here this evening too. And you know where I would start. I think the reason why Neil said walk in is that when I was speaking at that conference, it was about my mother being a walk-in actually, and so I'm a product of that, of growing up with someone who was a walk-in. But I will advance. I've had some interaction with beings during my life, age 4 and 5. My brother has been seeing several sightings and was on, what was it, MUFON or something back at 2008, because there was a lot of sightings in Bucks County at that point. And my mother had some interactions with it. And actually, that's where I would start. So I had a therapist at the time that was not my therapist. I was working in inner child workshop, And it was the first workshop, and she was invited in because it was at a clinic that both my mother and I created called the Farmhouse back in, I guess that was back in like 84, 85. And when this therapist came, he did a regression with her, and they recorded it. And the next day, they both came to me and said, I think you should listen to this recording, but don't do it I had 3 children, young children at the time. And they said, don't listen to it in front of the kids. Do it, in your quiet time, whenever that was. And when I listened to it, it wasn't about an abduction that she had. They didn't take her, but they did do some experiments with her. They scared her quite a bit, and that regression was terrorizing for her. So when I heard that, her voice and her really screaming in terror because she couldn't move, and there were 2 beings there that were doing something to her. There was a voice that came up from inside me, and it was, we did not do that. I did not do that. And it was a bit of a surprise to me. I didn't understand it, and it kept up. So the next day I spoke to the therapist at the time, and I said, I don't know what this is about. And he said, well, let me do a regression with you. So we set up one, and who emerged out of that regression was a being called Ellie Wazar. Now, that was probably back in 91. Maybe it was a little earlier, maybe 90. And that being came in from Meldeck, and he was here with a purpose because I had been told that I was going to, and this is through meditations, I was told that there was going to be a family that were going to come in that were kin, and I didn't know who that was. And I was doing a lot of clients at that time. I was just learning to be a medical intuitive. I was doing a lot of kinesiology, had taken the One Brain classes, all of those, and I was really fascinated by the human development and the psyche, and all the underlying impinging places that we get caught up in. And one day this is prior to Ellie coming in, there was a couple that came in, and they started to talk about other beings. And I was like, is this the kin? And it was. And it's actually somebody, it's a husband and wife that actually became part of the family as my kids' grandparents, or what do they call it? I can't think of the name of it, but anyhow, they helped take care of the kids because I was a single parent at the time. So moving forward with what was going on with Ellie, as he came in, there was a small group that they belonged to. And he came in because part of that group was part of his craft people, that he had left Maldak when it blew up. He actually landed up crashing in the Tibetan mountains at that time. And there were part of those people were his crew. And so he came in to open that door for completion for them. And that lasted about 5 years. In working with them, it was also an adapting for me because it was a channeling time for me. And I can tell you that I didn't really like channeling. I don't like something coming through my physical form. It felt like my voice was different. My hands were locked in place, to bring the energy in. I felt energized afterwards, and I was fine afterwards, but I really wasn't so thrilled with the idea of channeling. And when that group was over, he kind of took a hiatus. But in the meantime, he had introduced me to, it was a council of 12. What they would do is, there was 9 of them that were really on the council, and they would leave 3 chairs open, 3 seats open, spaces open for visitors. And I worked within a space it was a teaching facility called the council room. It was just not open for the council. It was open for many other, it was a galactic type of facility that others would come in and teaching. So you could either be in the audience or you could be part of this council, not part of it, but watching the council. And they would come in with different information, and, they would help me work with clients at times. And what happened with that is I worked with them for like 20 some years, and they stayed the same. They were, part of them were masters and teachers, and they, I can say that they made a significant impact on my life because I utilized them and we became very familiar with each other in not only my practice and work, but also in my personal life and dealing with raising three children and all of that life entails. They were very informative and helpful, and I really appreciated them. It was really a bondedness. Then I'll fast forward at 40, my birthday at age 40. I woke up in the morning and there was a message that came through because we at that point we're talking without necessarily going into the council room. So that message came forward and it said, "You're moving." Now, what you need to understand is my mother and I had a practice for over 10 years. We were both, it was 24/7. I was working a tremendous amount of hours in the week, and so was my mother. And we had this business together. So it was not on our minds at all to move. And I was quite shocked by it. And I walked around for 3 days saying, "No, I'm not moving." And they were like, "Yes, you are." And I was like, "No, I'm not." And by the third day, without saying anything to anybody, my mother came up to me and said, I think we should move. And that was kind of, the writing was on the wall. So we moved up to New York. I was given a choice to either go to West Virginia or New York. Well, the family that I spoke about earlier that were godparents, that's the word, for my children, were in upstate New York. So I thought, well, that feels like the logical place to go. So moved up here and still kept that council going and still kept clients going. And fast forward past that, that was my initial move of like, you need to be out of Pennsylvania, because I grew up in Bucks County. You need to be out of Pennsylvania and move up to New York because you're going to be working with women, or you're going to be, you're going to be doing something a little different. When my mother passed in 2013, I was her primary caretaker for about 16 years. And the moment, and you have to realize that my mother was always ill. I think that was from being a walk-in, until she had moved away from my father, had gone through a divorce, started her own practice. And when she came out of a 3-year illness, what they thought that she was only going to last 6 months, she became more of a healer. She kind of adapted to, she kind of brought in that place of being a walk-in. And I was always fearful in my childhood of her dying because she was dying when I was in utero. And it was always something. There was always some major crisis that was happening with her. And the moment she died, the moment she took her last breath, it was like a sci-fi movie for me. I closed my eyes and I was definitely upset and crying and, not knowing where I was or who I was in some way. But it was like all these walls just came tumbling down and blown away. And I found myself visually in my head in a desert with nothing, with no one there. And it took me a little while to, to adapt to that. It felt like I cried for hours and hours, and people just let me do that because it was such a big loss for me for my whole life. And about a week later, other beings started to come in. And what I realized is that she had such a deep protection around me because she was a walk-in and because she didn't necessarily adjust to that. She didn't know exactly what to do with that. And she was very religious. And so I was kind of caught in that web of her protection. And I did have an agreement with her that I knew that was unspoken, is that I would not step out of her comfort zone. I wasn't going to go into something that was in her world not okay, that I wasn't going to do that until she was no longer here. So all those walls broke down and other beings started to come in. And what they showed me for the next 5 years, it's been 8 years now that she's passed. The first 4 years, they would come in one at a time and they would tell me their story. About who they were, how they knew each other, or where they came from, basically to get me to understand and becoming a mediator with them to understand what they were about, and they're not that much different than what humans go through. And they're in their own evolutionary process. What I've come up to find later in asking something of them, like, I have 28 beings that I work with. 9 of them are from the original council, and the others are these new beings that have emerged in the last 4 years, but really 8 years that I've been working with this group. And when I asked them, are you all just this timeline? Because time is irrelevant, really. And they were like, no, we are really light beings, but we have shown you these timelines so that you can talk to people about, we're not that much different from you. And there's Sirians and Pleiadians and Arcturians and Greys, and some of them are defectors. What I mean by that is that they've come over to a being having a different mindset, having a different belief system from places that are reptilians, or the Greys that have, some of them have a bad rep. And so I've worked with them, understood where they come from, and why they don't want to be in that category of what some species are put in. So they've come together to tell their story. They've come together to show me who they are and to work with people. I run a group for the last 5 years on a Sunday, every third Sunday of the month, and that opens that information for them to come forward and to teach in the council room. So they've been very helpful for me. That what I understand is that they're here. They do have a mission. When they came in, their mission was very clear, that what they want to do for humans, because we are their history, they are our future, and some of them are our past. But what they want to clear is timelines, that we each hold a timeline. I think that's why they bring in their own stories, is that's one particular timeline that they've lived through, that we could see them as very different because they don't necessarily look human like we would say, that we look. They don't necessarily, not all of them look like that. But they wanted to show us that even if they don't look like us, even if they're different than us, they're very much alike. We're very much alike in how we have families, and we have beliefs, and we have things that we need to move through, and we make mistakes, and we have wins, and we have love, and we have all of those things. So they're bringing that forward for us to take a look at the timelines that we get stuck in. Where is our energy going? Where is our timelines? Whether it's in this lifetime and there's unfinished business that we have, or whether it's past lives that there's unfinished business that hold us back because we haven't completed that. They come forward to clear that, and their belief, or their knowing, because some of them are future from us, is that this karmic loop that we are involved in, if we deal with more of our timelines, if we let go of what holds us back, that moving forward, the karmic loop doesn't have to exist. So we get more choice. Like when we leave this lifetime and we leave this physical form, and we're freer, then we don't have to be in that karmic loop to say, wow, I did this to a partner, or I treated my children this way, and I need to come back and make it better. We will have more choice because we have already dealt with that. So they're here for those two reasons. They're here to clear the timelines, to either integrate them, because timelines are in the future as well. And what I can say is that there's several of them that are on the council that in this integration process, which has been mind-blowing for me, because in the last few years, if I am going through something emotional that just comes out of the blue, I have to ask now, is this mine? Because sometimes it's not. Sometimes they're showing me something about them that needs to be cleared, that needs to be addressed, that it's either them or I'm connected to it in some way. So the integration process has been very fascinating, and it is still in the process with whoever is stepping forward. So it's not a daily thing, but when it shows up like that, I have to remember that I'm not only dealing with myself, but I'm dealing with others that communicate through me. And that brings us up, I think, up to present day with me working with them. I'm in the process of writing two books. One would be The Being Stories, which is fascinating for me because as I'm writing it, I'm learning more about them, and it's a surprise. So it's exciting in writing it because I'm finding out things about them that I didn't really know. That's a surprise to me. And the other is being written with a sociology professor. We taught for the last 4 years doing astrosociology in SUNY down in a campus in Purchase campus, which is down by New York City. And that is a wonderful experience in working with this age category with where they don't know anything really about this. They might be fascinated or curious about it, but they really don't know the dynamics of the history, not just of these beings, but the history of, what is the truth in science and what is the truth in our history and what has been hidden from us. That whole potential to open up their consciousness to see where they are and where they resonate. And we've gotten tremendous amount of great feedback and movement, and kids that several of them are in the Sunday, I call it the Sunday Sage group, but they're in that group, and it's nice to watch them emerge, with questions and curiosity, because I think that's a lot of what's missing in our society today is really being curious instead of following what you're being told, like really investigate so that you're looking at your heart and mind, you're making discerning decisions. You're not just saying, oh, well, so-and-so said that, so it must be true. Not necessarily, you really need to investigate so that you're using your faculties to discern. So I think that's it, Andrew, unless you have specific questions about anything that I just said.
Yes. Well, things that you've said, I noticed that you do have a YouTube video here where you've uploaded 10 videos over the past year and whatnot. Doesn't seem like you get to it much, but the titles of the videos seem to offer great talking points regarding the work that you do. So I think I might as well use that as a little bit of a guide here. Chaos versus creativity was the first ever video that you uploaded, and it's interesting that you would actually seem to suggest that chaos and creativity oppose each other to the point where you would put the word versus or the abbreviation VS period between them. Creativity is definitely something that humanity is well, it's a blessing we have it, considering that the Archon control system that still has some control over humanity. Some people say it's been shut down entirely, but I don't know. I think maybe that's a little kind of wishful thinking. They have no creative imagination, and we do. And when it comes to chaos, the common claim is you need to have some chaos in order for there to be order. The 33rd degree of Freemasonry talks about order out of chaos. And, well, is it necessarily true that we need to bring negative things out to the public in order for positivity to eventually come out? Sai Baba asserted that with all these negative things coming out, he says that's only a sign that there is more light. Well, I guess so, but then again, I back in the day anyway, I don't do it as much now, I assure you, but back in the day I was criticized for being a little too Alex Jones-like and with a little bit of fear porn every so often, but I asserted that's good for giving people a nice kick in the pants. You got to wake people up with some of that stuff, and bring order, you got to bring chaos. But you actually suggest, like I said, chaos versus creativity. Why did you choose that as a title of the video? And do you have anything to say about the idea that chaos needs to happen in order for us to have order? And also, is there anything you can comment about regarding humanity versus having the creative imagination, unlike the Archon control system that does not?
Well, I would start with, I think a lot of people in the clients, some of the clients that I work with, chaos is traumatizing for them. You know, it's like they don't understand it. They can't function in it. They become anxious. They can't sleep. You know, their digestion goes off. And the other thing that's on my website is I'm also a medical intuitive. But what comes up for chaos is shifting people so that they understand that the chaos, that it is creativity. You know, it is a piece of creativity, so that in that what we don't understand, what's expansive, it's really an expansive place, the chaos. And if you take a look at it as it's leading you through something, it's not that you have to control it. You have to surrender to it in some way so that you can move more into the creative aspect. So you own it. So you can say, oh, here's this piece here that I really resonate with in this chaos that I can grab a hold of and do something with. Well, everything else might be falling apart. It gives them a lead. It gives them an anchor, a support, a foundation in some way. So it's chaos, even though it's part of creation. I think a lot of people don't really grasp that, because when they're in it, it feels overwhelming.
Well, thank you for elaborating on that. And it seems like, well, I don't know if I should digress on this, but I've heard like people use chaos as an excuse to justify taking away liberty. One of the classic examples of this seems to be the case where, like, if you try to point out to people that humanity has been suckered into the whole traffic ticket scam, that you actually don't need a license, insurance, and registration to use your car to travel from point A to point B on the public roads, unless you're using them in commerce to use the roads for a business where you get paid as part of a business. It seems like a lot of people, when they hear that, the first thing that jumps out to them is, are you nuts? There would be chaos in the streets if we didn't have laws and didn't have police pulling people over and giving them tickets. And it drives me crazy to think that people are that are like that. But maybe as someone who tries to do everything you can to help people, um, can you help make sense of why it is that there are people in this world who actually insist that we need to have laws that ban things because someone doesn't like it, even if there is no harm? Something needs to be made, needs to be criminalized, because they fear that there's going to be chaos and anarchy if such laws did not exist. What causes people to be like that?
Well, if that person was to show up working with me, first thing that I would look at is taking a look at, where does that belief system come from? You know, that if there is no order, if there is no structure, if there isn't, you know, that everything's going to fall apart in chaos. And that could be something that happened in this lifetime, in their childhood. It could even be birthing. It might go back to past life. And when they understand the dynamics of what creates that belief system, they can choose to do something different with it. You know, because they're not tied to it. They have a different piece of information. Oh, that came from the lifetime that I blew up at Mount Vesuvius, you know, or, you know, whatever that programmed pieces, that cellular information is that gets stuck with us. I think that's why the beings are, because I understand that. I worked with that. My in utero experience, I remember putting pieces together, because my mom was so toxic and she was in the hospital. She wasn't even supposed to have me, but there was a disconnection in my in utero experience, and I felt that I had to put myself together. I had to put all these pieces together, and that's my work, right? Putting all these pieces together for people so that they can connect the dots for their physical, their emotional, their mental, their spiritual. They connect all the dots of where these timelines have come from, how they join together to provide them for where they are. So I would look at each individual separately to say, okay, you have a belief system that works for you. Let's see where it comes from. You know, let's pull it apart. Let's put the pieces together of however you come up to this, you know, and then you can have a better decision of, yeah, that makes sense to me, or, you know, no, I'm still fearful. I still need to know that there's going to be structure or whatever, because if it isn't, you know, I'm going to die.
Thank you.
That's
And
how we do it.
I'm sure you elaborate some on that too. There's another video I see here talking to those who are in fear, where I'm sure you got into some of those points as well. There's another video I see here titled "How Often Do You Say I'm Sorry?" and that I think it's appropriate to ask, when does it become appropriate to use those words? You hear people use it in different contexts, like if someone does something harmful or negative to someone else and they realize that it was a mistake and they feel bad for it, then they would naturally say, I'm sorry. But like when you hear that someone had a friend or relative that passed away and you tell them, I'm sorry about your friend or relative who died, well, is that an appropriate use of the word sorry? I mean, why would you have to say, I'm sorry for someone dying when it wasn't even your fault that that person died? So I don't know if that's exactly how you get into this subject matter, but when it comes to being sorry and sorrowful, when does it become appropriate to use that phrase? And you say, how often do you say it? Is there like, are you trying to imply that if you say it too much, or the tone of voice that you use to say it has something to do with it, then it's a problem? Please elaborate on what this was all about.
Okay, so the I'm sorry video was actually about Ho'oponopono. If you're familiar with that, I use it quite often with people because it's a release. It's part of what they can do to integrate other parts of themselves, to clear timelines. It's a pretty big piece of that, of what I use. And it's, I'm sorry, please forgive me, I love you, and thank you. And so it's the I'm sorry. And when I guess it was in my early 40s when I was introduced to the Ho'opono. And I started a journal, and I suggest it for people as well, especially if you've had any kind of unfinished business or trauma or anything like that that you're holding on to, or you did something to somebody, or even as a kid or a teenager, you acted different, or you hurt somebody, or whatever. It's to do this process because it really does free up the energetic body. And so the I'm sorry comes from a place, and how I explain it is, it just can't be in your head like, oh, I'm sorry, because nothing moves, right? No energy moves. There's no heartfelt compassion. There's no anything coming from you when it's just, oh, I'm sorry, when it's from your head. But dropping into that heart space, when you start to do, if you choose to do this journal or any kind of, Ho'opono, it's dropping into that heart space so that you're doing the I'm sorry from a really genuine place of understanding that you are sorry if there was something that happened, that you did something to someone. And it's the I'm sorry, please forgive me, I love you, and thank you. So that journal for me was, it lasted like 3 months. I would do several people, and I made a list of all, and even there was a couple of things on there where I hit an animal, and that was very traumatic for me. So I put that in there, that I'm sorry that I ruined your life, I killed you, So I look at this as a very freeing place of the I'm sorry when it comes from the heart space. Even moving deeper into that, it's not just what you've done to others. It's also what has happened to you. So if you've had surgeries, if you've had accidents, if you've had serious illnesses, if you've had anything where your body has been invaded, not by choice, but by something else, molestation or anything like that, it's really important to take those ages that those events happen to you and do the Ho'opono with. Because what I find out with people is that they're separated from their physical body a lot. So it promotes illness, it promotes disconnection, it promotes a pain body, And so doing that work for themselves really helps them to unite so that the body wants to work with them more. It's not a separate place. You want to work with your body. What does your body really need? What does it want to eat? What does it want to drink? Does it want to rest? What kind of work do you really want to do? When you start to bond with your body in that way, your life changes, health changes, spirituality changes. So that video was really about the Ho'opono and saying I'm sorry at a very deep level to just clear yourself.
Thank you. Now, the video next to that do you allow differences in your life? I'm sure maybe this goes off on a tangent here, I'm about to say here, but when it comes to differences, we need to put our differences aside as humanity. One area that seems quite common, that I think of often, is the controversy regarding the border. Like, you have one camp of people that seem to insist we need to vet immigrants that cross the border. But on the other hand, and it's interesting, like, one camp that does not want, that wants open borders, are the crazy, brainwashed liberal left. But it's interesting that another group that wants open borders seems to be spiritual people who insist we're all humans. There's no reason to vet someone and say just because my tribe is of a different nature than your tribe, I see a reason to vet you to enter my country and do business in my country. And a lot of spiritual people, I've been to conferences where they say, I envision a future many years from now where we have open borders. Well, talk to some of the people on the right end of the political spectrum, they'd think you're absolutely mad. Alex Jones was once asked, who he suggests we secure the border, and as did the recent president, who should be in the White House but isn't. Why doesn't the right to liberty, right to travel, right to locomotion allow people to cross borders without any government permission or paperwork filing? Isn't it a basic human right, regardless of our differences? And he was like, well, there has to be a process. I'm not a suicidal libertarian. It's not like we're bordering Switzerland. That was his response. But when we try to make sense of differences in people, and how we can become more united, I think it's fitting that I point out that Indigo Child Matias De Stefano, and I'm hoping to get to his conference in Egypt on next February. The hotspot day will be 2/2/2022. A lot of twos. A hot day of the conference there on the Giza Plateau. He has asserted in the year 2022, at some point in that year, there's going to be a connection, binding of universal grid energies around the earth, which is going to allow humanity to get along with each other a lot better, regardless of our differences. Well, I guess we'll get along just like the hippies did in the 60s. Hopefully we won't be apathetic and complacent, and like a lot of the hippies were in the 60s, but it's nice to know that we'll be getting along regardless of our differences when that comes around. So allowing differences in your life, I was pointing out that maybe it is a little not allowing differences to vet people at the border because they're of a different tribe. But maybe that's, like I said, probably on a little bit of a tangent here. So allowing differences in your life, and specifically people who are different for whatever the reason. What do you have to say about that?
Well, in the work that I do with the council of 28, when I was introduced to what I call the defectors, because they, for some people say, oh, you shouldn't work with reptilians because they're this, and the Greys are that, and the Arcturians are that, and, they vetted them. They didn't just bring them in and say, oh, here they're okay. I would have a meeting with them to understand each one of them, to understand their story. But being part of the council, I wasn't privy to what that vetting was or how that was. I just know that it existed, that it wasn't an open border type thing that everybody could just come in. You had to earn the trust. You had to show the rest of the council or the Galactic Federation, or however they've done it, that what you're saying and coming across from one species as how they were looked in their belief systems and how they carried themselves into a more benevolent place, that they were real about that they were honest about that they were committed about that. And part of that is the acceptance and the allowance piece of getting to know whoever's coming across the borders, getting to know what are they about, who are they? Maybe not individually necessarily, because that can be very time consuming, but it's understanding from a compassionate way. But they also need to know that there's rules, there's things, there's structure, there's that. But the acceptance and allowance piece is more of what is heart-based of, I can accept that you are different than me. I may not really agree with you, but I can accept that based on what I know about you and your background and your history and your genetics and all of that, that I can understand and accept that is where you are. And most people just want to be heard. They just want to be heard. They don't get a platform. When you think of communication with people, most of the time, unless they're really trained or they're therapists or, they're in some way in that professional level, when you're speaking to somebody, the other person usually is in their head trying to figure out what they're going to say, and they're not necessarily actively listening. But when you're actively listening to something, our potential to have our hearts and minds open for them, to have some kind of compassion or empathy for who they are, doesn't mean that you have to agree of their actions, but being connected to them in some way, because we are all connected, whether we want to believe it or not, it brings us to that place of what can open up, what can be possible, because we are so limited. When we start to work in the quantum field, and we take a look at, there's infinite possibilities there. So when we lock ourselves in with, oh, you're this way, or you're that way, or, this is what you're going to do when you come into here, that, we know that's what you're going to do, that locks that person in. I've seen it happen with parents with their children. They lock them in based on their childhood, about how that child is going to act. What do you think is going to happen to that kid? He can't get out of the box. It's about us getting out of the box of what we create in our reality, so that we have better communication. And in better communication, we can understand each other better. And then, will there really be issues with borders? Does it have to come to that? Will there be vetting? Probably. I don't believe that everything is going to be utopia, but what I'm hoping in the future, and what I understand from the beings, is that there is this possibility of us advancing on the conscious level as well as on our heart level, to know that there isn't getting away from each other. You can't get away from yourself, let alone get away from each other. And how do you work with Gaia and the earth? And how do we bring all of this together? Will it happen in my lifetime? I really hope so, but I don't think so. I think this is a long lifetime of pulling people together that are of the same resonance, that want to change, that want to accept and allow others, that don't want to condemn and judge. So that's how I see it.
Very, very well said there. Looking at your little brief bio here on the Meet Darlene thing on your website, it says you have a formal education which includes certification and teachings of kinesiology and massage. Now, maybe I'm a little biased in asking this, because I'm going to get into the massage thing a whole lot more. I just spent with my credit card about $1,700 on one of those slabway massage chairs after seeing an ad for it on YouTube. I could not resist. Going to try to get rid of the current chair I have in my living room. Gonna sell it for $444. It originally cost $764. Maybe the 444 thing will bring a little luck in regards to trying to sell it. But that slabway chair, with all the health benefits it's supposed to bring with the massage that it allows you to have in all your body parts, and I'm not going to use it for myself. I'm going to let my dear sweet mama and my old man use it. They're in their mid-60s now, and I'm living in a garage apartment on their property, so it's only fair that for all they've done for me throughout my life, that I give them the opportunity to use that chair to live to a comfortable, ripe old age, and it can bring so many benefits, apparently, and I'm sure you know about that. So maybe you can enlighten me on how those chairs like that actually work, and how massaging in general works, and kinesiology, I'm sure, is related to this, body movements and whatnot. So why don't you tell us all about how massaging improves and does the body good, and if you know anything about the chairs that do it, by all means, enlighten me and what I'm in store for.
Well, anything that moves the body. So, like if these have the rollers on it, I'm assuming, or they're going up and down the back and probably the legs and all that, it's going to move lymph. And in moving lymph, which is part of our immune system, it's going to help that immune system to activate. So that place in general is good for the body. It's also going to hit the sore points. It's going to hit the tight muscles. It's going to hit, whatever is out in them in some way. You probably just have to. The only thing with older people is that you might need to put. I don't know how strong the chair is, but you might need to put some kind of towel or something if it's something that has a lot of rotary action there, because they could get very sore. So I would say that, chairs, or I think it's an eye massage. It's from Brookstone that I love. It's got two rotating parts on it, and I just put it anywhere. If I've been gardening for the day or anything like that, I just put that on at night, and it just relieves everything. So having a massage that way, having something that is promoting, movement and fluid movement in the body, I think is always very helpful. But hands-on massage is very different, and I think a lot of people need that, especially from where we just were in the last 15 months. That element of touch is really important. I know that my mother introduced me. She had gone through her health crisis. She then became a massage therapist so she could have a license in order to put hands on. And it's a funny thing. I was making $5 an hour working at Lit Brothers, if you remember that. And she was making $10 an hour. And I was like, wow, I just want to move out of the house. So if I make $10 an hour, I could pay for a place. And so I went to learn how to do massage. And when I came out of there, I had all these ideas about touch. Like, I wasn't going to work on any men. I wasn't going to work on anybody that was heavy. I wasn't going to work on anybody that was hairy. You all had to be like 120 pounds and under, and then I would work on it. And in her brilliance, she sent me everybody that wasn't that. And within like 6 weeks, I would say I really fell in love with the human body. I enjoyed feeling what was going on in the body and how it worked and where was the tight spots and where, it really invited me into this space of everything that I do right now. So that place of touch, I think, is really important in massage, especially if you get somebody that really is tuned in to the massage. They're not just doing it because, and I would imagine that most massage people don't just do it because it brings them money. I would think that you're drawn to it in some way. And so that's what I would say about massage. I think it's a wonderful way of connection, and healing a lot of times just happens through that place of interaction and exchange. The beings call it biotransference, which is part of what they see kinesiology being, but any kind of touch from one human to the other is we're transferring our energy from one person to the other in a way that if the intention is to heal, then that's what holds it.
Thank you. And another way to heal and also enlighten yourself that you seem to have experienced in here, according to the bio here, plant medicine. So many different types of plants that can be medicine. The whole cannabis controversy over the health benefits, I'm sure. Of course, the reason cannabis is made illegal is not the reasons why we're led to believe it is. That's a whole new can of worms anyway, kind of out of the realm of this conversation. But other types of plant medicines besides cannabis, whether can tobacco be considered a medicine? All the tobacco fascists would say no, but George Kavasilis, he said that his favorite species of tobacco, and I actually have been smoking some of this tobacco myself during the course of this interview out of my pipe, Mapacho tobacco from the Amazon rainforest. He asserts that that's if there's any tobacco species that's worthy of being called medicinal, it would be Mapacho tobacco. And when it comes to tobacco, I would certainly prefer that people switch from cigarettes to cigars and pipes, because inhaling into your lungs like you do with cigarettes is the quickest way to become addicted. Cigar and pipe smokers who don't traditionally inhale don't actually seem to crave nicotine as much as cigarette smokers do. Native Americans also who used tobacco in rituals also would not have, I'm sure they would not have inhaled it into their lungs. I have experience with ayahuasca, San Pedro, and peyote. Did them all in ceremonies. And as a matter of fact, I recently made a switch. I've given up alcohol and made the switch to kava kava, buying the plant medicine of choice of the Pacific Islands. And I made some brew yesterday. It says no more than 3 tablespoons of kava kava mixed with a cup of water per tablespoon. I make it the traditional way by putting it in a strainer bag and mixing and blending the bag in some water for about 5 minutes before drinking it. And I would say that the effects of the kava kava, it's like alcohol, but without the risk of socially inappropriate behavior that can come with alcohol. And the Pacific Islanders seem to agree with that. So maybe I'm babbling a little too much about personal experience and whatnot, but I just want to give a taste of some good plant medicines that are worth it. And of course, there's also some other plant medicines that are not so, aren't going to give you like a high or a trip, um, like um, like maybe St. John's wort. Some say a pill of St. John's wort can help a lot of people if you're stressed out and have a lot of mood problems. But of course, there's some other medications you gotta be careful with because that can have some problems if you don't take the wrong medication in conjunction with St. John's wort. St. John's wort also is poisonous to horses, I hear, for all the of all animals. Okay, but I'm babbling enough here. Which plant medicines do you have experience in? And can you maybe give me some advice on kava kava? Because I heard you laugh, chuckle after I said I've given up alcohol and have switched to it. So, anything to say about that as well, and other plant medicines?
Yeah, kava kava is great, especially for anyone that, is carrying any kind of anxiety or, can't sleep well or that, and a lot of people are these days. I think this last year has been really tough on people that have been anxious already, and using more herbal rather than medication sometimes is a good place to start. It may not be strong enough. So I say to people, I'm not against medication. I mean, if you need medication, you're going to know that you need it because the plant medicine or herbs or homeopathic are just not going to do it for you. And that's fine to get you into a place where you're more neutral or able to function is the idea. So kava kava is good. I've only seen it in capsule form. I have not seen it in powder or leaf form. But I would say that plant medicine, I have not tried the hallucinogenics, but I have several doctors that I work with that have done the MDMA, and they are also facilitators for that. And the results that they're getting from people, you need definitely to have somebody that's clinical with it. You can't just do it on your own, even though some people are microdosing with that. But it does handle PTSD. I've had somebody that was very much of he wouldn't call himself an alcoholic, but he enjoyed his alcohol. And within one session, he had changed that. There's a lot going on that even the medical profession is looking at with these places that were condemned before, or they weren't monitored before or whatever. They're more looking into it. And a lot of these substances over in Europe are being used with great success. So hopefully someday we'll allow that in, just like we did with the marijuana, to allow it in under supervision, under some way, so that people can get healed. Because some places, medicine for some people do not work. And so these other plant-based medicines that have a consciousness, when you deal with ayahuasca and things, people that have done that, they really have a connection to the ayahuasca goddess and bringing that energy in and having communication. And some people don't like it and some people do. And I find that it's all up to finding your own path, if that's something that you aspire to, if that's something that you feel drawn to. You should never do, here's a should, I never do shoulds, but here's a should. Don't follow what other people think that you should do. Really check it out with yourself, when it comes to any kind of psychedelics or peyote or anything. Check it out with yourself, and not just because everybody's doing it. really find, is this what I want to do? Meditate on it, connect with it, ask questions about it before you do it. Because it can be, for some people, it's traumatic, and for other people, it's very mind-blowing and mind-opening, and their life changes. So that's what I have to say about that.
Right. And you also have experience in nutritional counseling. I did a session with Akashic Records reader Andrew Bartzis. First thing I talked about with him is maybe some advice on how to lose some weight, and he was telling me a couple things I wasn't too thrilled about hearing because, well, first of all, I've been saying for the past several years that I expect my animal product eating habits to go down, 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 but never give them up entirely. You'd see a graph, you make a graph of my animal product eating habits for my whole life up until the day of my death. It'll probably be a hyperbole, or is it hyperbola? Yeah, hyperbola. The hyperbole is exaggeration. Hyperbola is the graph that looks like it's getting closer and closer to zero, but never actually reaches zero. But he was advising me that if you want to lose weight, it's not so bad to do sort of an Atkins style diet, increase the meat and cut back on the carbs. And he told me that it's very, very, very hard for the human body to go strictly vegetarian, and even harder to go strictly vegan. In fact, I've
Mhm.
seen kind of what going vegan can do to people. This guy I knew who was kind of cool with me, but he eventually seemed like to become a total jerk when he went vegan and advertised his veganism by wearing shirts with big green letters that said vegan all the time, and calling people horrible things if they ate animals and all. I kind of had to ditch him as a friend as a result of that. Um, but the idea that you need to, but many people have on this planet, as in conjunction with the Earth's vibrational frequency rising, are actually moving towards vegetarian diets, and part of me actually wants to do that. But then again, as Andrew Bartz has said, it's very, very hard to go vegetarian, and he did advise eating more meat as a way of, if you insist on losing weight. So, what nutritional counseling can you give? Do you agree or disagree with his advice, and also the attitude of going entirely vegan? Is it really in your best interest to do that?
So I would start with the keto diet, where it's mostly animal protein. And I've seen people do it, and I think that for a period of time, but it stresses the kidneys, it stresses the body in some way. So you put your body in a stress action place. That isn't necessarily bad for some people. I would also go by their blood type. I think that if they're O, they can handle more animal protein as opposed to A, B. I think I have to look at that, but there's some that really need vegetarian, and there's others that need protein. So for weight loss, for that, doing the higher protein, what I usually tell people is, try it for 3 weeks, maybe even 6 weeks, and then go off of it for a week to 10 days. Don't load up on junk and anything else, but kind of wean yourself off of it. And if you need to go back on it, but it's really, for me, it's purpose driven and some people feel really, really good on the keto diet. So it's that place of identifying what works for you. What I usually find with people is that it's our liver that becomes the issue. It's the liver that doesn't digest well. It's the stomach and liver combination, which includes the gallbladder, and then you get the pancreas thrown in there. And so it's that place of when there's too much processed foods or too much processed sugars or alcohol. And for some people, it's even coffee. It depends on what you put in coffee. You have black coffee. Maybe your body can handle that, but you start to add a creamer or sugar, and it changes the chemical components of that, and your liver may not tolerate it. So it's those elements of food is defining what creates inflammation in the body. And if your body is very inflamed, then getting off of all of that. And I try to tell people, wean yourself off if you can't do it cold turkey. is to wean yourself off of the sugars and the carbs and all of that. And again, do it for like 6 weeks, because if you can get past the 6 weeks, you have both a different mindset and a different reset in the body. Where when you have a bite of chocolate or sugar or whatever, at that point, you can be more discerning of how you feel afterwards. Like, wow, I don't feel so good after I just had that half a candy bar, right? So you come to that place of honoring your body, hopefully, by not diving into that. But there's always emotional issues of why we eat the junk that we eat. So it's looking at that as well. You're talking about vegan. I have quite a few people that are vegan. I have quite a few people that are vegetarian. You have to keep a balance with a vegetarian to make sure that you're getting the protein that you need, because there's been a few clients that really started to get ill. They've been vegetarian for like 35 years. But I don't know if they were doing it in a healthy way. And they started to lose their energy, their skin started to change, their bone structures, they really were not feeling well. And doctor told them to go on B12 and eat some kind of animal protein. And they turned around within like 48 hours, because they needed it. They needed something. It doesn't mean that they're going to go on the keto diet. No, but they need some kind of protein that wasn't in their diet at the time. And even bone broth in some way turns people around. So, I think that there's a balance with all of that. And vegan, a lot of people that are that promote the vegan are basically because of the animal rights, which is their right to do that. They have to just be very mindful of what food they take in so that their body stays healthy and balanced. Because if they had the O blood and they're just going to go totally vegan, they have to be really mindful of how to keep that protein level up in a way that their body will accept it and not get ill.
Thank you for for that advice there. Now, you the term DNA does seem to come up quite a few times in your website here and your work, I'm sure. Now, when it comes to understanding what DNA is and what it can do, David Wilcock, he recently did another one of his. He's uploading a lot of 2 to 3 hour presentation videos recently on his channel. One recent one was talking about DNA and what it has and doesn't have the ability to do. I would like to ask specifically if DNA is what enables the people on planet Earth who we can refer to as superhuman because of their unique ability to do whatever it is that they do that is super. By super, it doesn't necessarily mean really strong, really all powerful. It just means above that which is normal for the average human's capability of doing. And does it all in the end come down to having parts of your DNA that are active that are not active in the people that are not superhuman? And if that is the case, what can the non superhumans do to activate their DNA? Because if we're truly infinite consciousness, then we have infinite possibility, which means we should be able to do what the superhumans are doing. So is it all in the DNA? And if it's not all in the DNA, then what else is it that allows the superhumans to do what they do? A lot of these people, they also got these abilities after they had a near-death experience. That's another thing worth pointing out. So you have anything to say about this, the DNA, and does it allow you to do what you do if you're a superhuman?
Can you explain what superhuman is to you?
Well, I just said it means being able to do that which the average human is not really able to do as easily. I guess it's a percentage factor too, regarding like a certain percentage of humans can do this, and being psychic, I guess superhuman, or the ability one thing I saw in this TV program, the Superhumans, one that seems to jump out at me for whatever reason is the ability to have a gun in a holster on their side pocket and pull the gun out in a second and instantly, without trying to aim, shoot the gun at whatever it is they're trying to shoot at and not have to go through the process of trying to aim for it and then and do it that at will. I mean, the average human would need to take a few seconds to aim the gun before they could shoot the target of choice. But this guy could just take it out of his pocket and blast the thing. And of course, there's my friend Daniel Teague, who I consult a lot for spiritual healings, who ever since having a near-death experience could consult things at the spiritual level and work at the spiritual level to cut spiritual cords and heal energetic blocks and activate people's chakras and clear negative energy out of places. But then again, superhuman. It's so broad. It would take me forever to keep talking about
Perfect.
this. So
Okay. Yeah, thanks for clearing that. See, when people say that there's superhuman versus this, like we all have those capabilities. So if you view, we have to take a look at, we don't want to create division that somebody's better than or somebody's less than or whatever, because we all have those capabilities. It's our choice. Does DNA play a part in it? Probably in some level. So does our past lives. So does our consciousness. So does our present choices. So it's our heart and mind connection. It's our intention. It's all of that coming together that creates each individual. And when you combine that with what are your lessons or what is your mission in life, not everybody's mission is to be a psychic or to help people or to read cards or in any capacity. Maybe they're a garbage collector that just wants to be outside all day. We can't judge how people choose their life if they are resonant with it, if they are in some way content with it or happy with it, in that place of allowing that expansion of wherever life is going to take them. But it's like DNA does play, I think, a piece in it. But then when you look at the epigenetics, we change our DNA. We can always change our DNA. We are not stuck with it. We're not stuck in the capacity that we used to think that we were. But when you change the environment, when you change your belief systems, when you change your mind about something, when you have a different intention, when you raise your consciousness and you're vibrating at a different level, that all affects the DNA. So that's how I see it, is that this superhuman place is, we're all capable of it. We just have to tune into it. We just have to create it for ourselves if it's really our desire to do that. And if it's your desire to do that and it's not happening, then take a look what's blocking you. Doesn't mean that you'll never have it or you can't have it. It just means that something is in the way that needs to be put in place in some way, understood or integrated, or however you need to work with it.
thank you. And there's actually a quote here on the site here, on your site, that Gandhi made. He said there is a force in the universe which, if we permit it, will flow through us and produce miraculous results. So he's suggesting it's not just in the DNA in your body, it's in the outer universe, and it's a force of sorts, like the force from Star Wars, that can all give us power to produce miraculous results. So I guess that sort of answers my question there. It's not just in the DNA, it is a force throughout the universe. So with that being said, we've reached a little over the hour point. So I guess I'll give this point now to give you the chance to get out anything you'd like to get out. Plug your site, plug your services, make a sales pitch out of this if you want, and I will make sure that I upload this to YouTube hopefully within the next few days, and 2 days at most. I still have a couple of other interviews I need to upload that I haven't been able to get to. Been kind of hectic, but I got to upload them, of course, before yours because I interviewed them before you. But hopefully 2 to 3 days from now, at most, I'll be able to get yours up to YouTube as well. I'll send you a link as well. And even though you haven't done a lot of work on your YouTube channel, by all means, I encourage you to upload this to your channel as well. If get anything possible to get people to listen to this stuff and kill two birds with one stone by more than one channel. So anything you want to get out, make a sales pitch, your work, and I'll plug your site. Close us out, please, Darlene.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And so my website is SoulUnion.com. And what I offer on that is one-on-one sessions with people and dealing with what's keeping them stuck or their past life regressions, or if they have any contact with beings. That's also how people come to me in wanting more information about how to access that. I also do the third Sunday of the month, and it's on that site called Cosmic Consciousness. And what else do I do? There is also something there called 3 Elite Mentoring, and that's myself with Jody and Richard, and we offer that as 3 consultants, as mentors in working with individuals to help them overcome any kind of stuck points that they have in business. We've worked with many people in the last 2 years, and their outcome is phenomenal. So that's on there. That's it's a YouTube that's up there. And let's see, I think that's about it. I look forward to hearing from anybody if they want sessions or join us on Sunday. And I'm really excited to be on this program. So thank you, Andrew.
You're very, very welcome. So without further ado, thank you very much for coming on. Thank you again, Neil Gore, for making it possible for me to hear about you with his interview with you. And best of luck to you. And maybe I'll see you at a conference or hear from you again. If you're going to a Portal Ascension conference when he holds another one, by all means, I'm sure I'll run into you then for sure, because I'm planning to go to some of his conferences in the future. So take care, namaste, and best of luck to you. You've done a lot of service for humanity, and I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you very much, Andrew.
Take care.
Take care. All right. Bye-bye.